You know, one of the words I keep hearing getting thrown around, I should say, over the past week is the word reboot. Especially with the release of several trailers. You know, a couple of days ago, several days ago, we had the release of the Animaniacs trailer, and everybody is excited about the potential that the new reboot, as they call it, will bring for the Animaniacs brand. But as I entitled it in my reaction video, my review video of it, I look at the Animaniacs 2020 series as a soft reboot, a soft retcon. The same could be said for the Saved by the Bell trailer that just dropped today as well, for the new Saved by the Bell reboot, which is actually a soft reboot, a soft retcon. And I wanted to come on here and basically talk about the differences between a real reboot and a soft reboot. In other words, the difference between a soft retcon and a real retcon. So, if you'll indulge me for this video, let me try to, without a script, from the top of my head, if you will, kind of explain to you what the difference is between the two. Okay, so obviously there's a little bit of confusion sometimes when it comes to what exactly is the new Saved by the Bell series. You know, what is it about? What is it, period? The same with the Animaniacs and several other properties in the past and in the future. You know, what are they? Are they, continuations? Are they all new original stuff? What is it? Well, when I look at something all new and original, I look at something that if it's based on a previous concept, kind of an upgraded, updated, version, I look at that as being like a reboot, if you will. A prime example is when DC and Marvel, and sometimes other comic book publishers, decide to do these massive events, crossover events between all the titles, and the end result is a reboot of what we had had previously. One of the best recent examples with DC Comics was when they went into the New 52 directive. Basically, the Flashpoint story basically set up the reboot for the DC universe. In other words, turned it into the New 52, which was met with very mixed criticism. Some liked it, some didn't. So in response to that, DC decided that they were going to reboot the universe again with Rebirth. Now, if you watch the DC animated series, or animated movies, I should say, that they've been bringing out, mostly the ones that connect the New 52 lineup into one story arc, you would know that the recent Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, the ending there basically, well, set the tone for another reboot. In other words, starting over all over again. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes a massive, hard reboot is not always a bad thing. Sometimes companies, mostly comic book publishers, do this because of a generational gap. Not a lot of kids or teens nowadays will kind of take a liking or understand why a character is acting like this, or why a character references that, or a character does this, or why this villain has this motive, as their, motivation or as their reasoning. They won't understand that. So what a lot of comic book companies do, from what I could tell, is they end up rebooting the entire series to start off fresh, so that the newer readers into the comic book series won't be so confused and conflicted as to what are these people referencing if they're referencing previous events from like 30, 40, 50 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago at the earliest. So what comic book companies do, basically, like I said, is they hit that hard reset button and basically start all over again. But when it comes to things like a soft reboot is completely different. A soft reboot is basically it consists basically of the reboot status, of the reboot genetics, if you will, or the properties of a reboot, but it's not like a hard reboot. It's not like what DC did, or Marvel has done, or several other companies have done to start all over. No, a soft reboot is basically something where you take an existing property, an existing continuity, and change things up to where you bring in, newer viewers, newer eyes to the product, but you also maintain the status quo. A good example of that, as I've mentioned before, is what Archie Comics did with Sonic the Hedgehog when it came at the end of 247. Long story short about that, because many of us have explained it already, Ken Penders basically took Archie Comics and Sega to court. And because Archie Comics didn't want to go through all the hassle of finding the documents that would basically be the evidence they need to utilize the characters that Ken had wrote for the series, they decided, mostly along with Ian Flynn's suggestiveness and influence, to basically reboot the series. Or in other words, softly reboot the series. And what a soft reboot basically consists is of removing certain characters that either by licensing, in this case with Ken Penders, licensing-wise can no longer be utilized, or removing certain events that have been too critically, negatively impacted by the fans, that you pretty much don't want to deal with them anymore. You don't want to hear the constant negative impact, so you use a soft reboot to erase said event, but you still keep the status quo within the continuity. In other words, a soft reboot is basically, like giving your room a whole makeover, giving your house an entire makeover. You're giving it a new fresh coat of paint, you're adding like shelves and everything that you never had before, and maybe to add to it, you're going out and dressing yourself up nice and everything and getting yourself a new hairstyle to celebrate the occasion. That there is kind of the example of what a soft reboot is. And in comparison to the hard reboot, again, like I said, it doesn't, stray away from the status quo. It basically keeps things as they are, with a few changes here and there that will entice new viewers to see what's going on, but won't confuse them, but will also entice older viewers, older readers to keep reading, because it's still the same continuity, it's still the same characters. They've just given them a completely new makeover, and you've only basically slightly altered the reality to kind of avoid, from behind the scenes standpoint, legal situations. And Archie Comics, when it comes to the Sonic comic, are not the only ones that have done this. DC has been known to do this, Marvel has been known to do this, IDW, Image, Dark Horse, you name them. Any comic book label publisher out there has been known to have to do a soft reboot and retcon to avoid any legal actions, or to basically get rid of any negative criticism that may come their way because they decide to go in one direction instead of another, and the fans that read that comic or follow that comic book publisher still feel it was a negative decision and will keep reminding them of it. So that's basically what a soft reboot is. Again, the difference between a hard reboot and a soft reboot, like I mentioned at first, a hard reboot is basically when you reset everything. Basically everything starts all over again. As I mentioned earlier, DC, Marvel, and other comic book publishers have been known to do this when they want to basically freshen things up for a new generation, or they feel things are too convoluted and confusing even for the newer readers to understand. That's why they end up going that hard reset route, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. If you don't believe me, ask Louis Lovehog, aka Linkara of Atop the Fourth Wall. Even he will tell you that basically hard reboots, resets are not a very popular deal. But when you compare it to a soft reboot and retcon, a soft reboot and retcon, like I said, is basically keeping things in the status quo, keeping things very identical and similar and familiar to an already established audience, but making it just a little bit fresh and new, new enough, I should say, for the newer viewers and newer readers to come in and probably check out what's going on and what the fuss is all about. But how does this compare and relate, I should say, to both the Animaniacs and the new Saved by the Bell trailers that just came out? Well, the way it relates to them is Saved by the Bell and Animaniacs are both considered, in my opinion, as soft reboots. If they were hard reboots, if they were hard resets, hard retcons, then basically the Saved by the Bell we would have right now or upcoming next month would consist of new actors and actresses portraying the original characters. In other words, we would have a new actor portraying Zach Morris. We would have a new actress portraying Kelly Kapowski. We would have new actor and actresses portraying AC Slater and Jesse, as well as new actors and actresses portraying Screech and Lisa. But we don't. We have new original characters in there to give it a fresh new take for a fresh new generation to be enticed to watch. But we also have that familiarity of the original OC characters from the original series. We have a grown-up AC Slater. We have a grown-up Jesse. We have a grown-up Kelly. We have a grown-up Zach. We have even Max from the first 2 seasons of Saved by the Bell, the waiter owner of that cafe, coming back. So you have that familiarity along with some new original concepts. So basically, when you look at something like Saved by the Bell, the 2020 version, it's not a hard reboot, it's a soft reboot. It's a soft retcon. In other words, it's a blending of the original and the new. That's what it is. The same with Animaniacs. Animaniacs is not a hard reboot. It's not a hard reset, because if it was, you would be able to definitely see it, long and hard. You would see maybe new redesigns of the Warner siblings. You would see new redesigns of Slappy Squirrel or Skippy Squirrel, of Minerva Mink, or the Good Feathers, you name it. You'd be able to see all that if it was a hard reboot and reset. You'd see it in the tone of the show maybe. But what you're getting here is a soft reboot, a soft retcon. And mainly what I mean by that is you still have that familiarity of the original series, the spirit of the original series, combined with some new elements to go along with it. You have the original slapstick humor and stuff, maybe toned down a little bit, but you still have it. That come with the showing of the Warner siblings, of Pinky and the Brain. But to basically culminate with that, to go with that, you also have the introduction of new original characters, new original concepts. The animation style, for example, is a good example, I should say, because it's very identical to the original, but you can see it's a little more cleaner around the edges. So basically you have, just like with Saved by the Bell, you have that familiarity with the original characters that you know and love, like the Warners and Pinky and the Brain and maybe a few others, but you also have that newness of new original characters, new concepts and stuff like that to get you enticed, to get you to want to watch. Whether you're an original fan and viewer of the original show, or you're a new fan and or you're a possible new fan that's getting enticed to probably, or intrigued to probably see this and wonder what it's about, and maybe go back and watch the original series that it's continuing from. Another thing that tells me that it's a soft reboot, just like Saved by the Bell, is the playing into the whole time situation. That time has passed at least about 20-something years for the Warners, and now they're catching up on a lot of things that's been going on. Same with Saved by the Bell. It's basically a time shift. In other words, it's about, what is it, like 27 years later, since, or 25 years later since the whole original series, including the college years, ended, the whole original series ended. Now, 25 years later, you have those same characters coming back for the new soft reboot continuation of Saved by the Bell, along with the new characters that are going along with it that will be focused on. The point that I'm getting at, guys, is this. Whether you want to consider it a reboot or you want to consider it something else, the truth of the matter is these are not hard resets. These are not hard reboots like, let's say, a lot of people are promoting them to be. These are soft reboots. They are soft retcons. In other words, these are soft resets. In other words, basically, I know I sound like I'm rambling, so I do apologize, and I'm going all over the place. I do apologize. But these are basically the same continuities. They're just taking place years apart, decades apart. And that's why I consider it a soft reboot and retcon on both platforms. So in conclusion, like I said, the difference between a soft reboot and a real reboot, a hard reboot, is with the hard/real reboot, that's when everything gets reset completely and you're starting all over. A soft reboot is basically you're continuing the same continuity, you're continuing the same timeline, you just altered a few things or changed things up due to certain legal reasons or behind the scenes reasons or whatever, but also because you want to keep it fresh and new for a newer audience to enjoy. In other words, you have that originality of the original show or the original story or concept, but you're now combining it with the new stuff. So that's basically what a soft reboot is compared to a hard reboot, because a hard reboot, like I said, is basically where you're starting all over, from scratch. In other words, you're going and taking a number 999 issue and just ending the comic there and starting over with the next issue being number 1. When it came to the Sonic comic, they could have done that too, but they didn't. Instead of going, okay, here's the end of 251 and 252 is going to be the new number 1 of Sonic. No. Instead, they went 251 and then right into 252. That is what a soft reboot is. So, hopefully, I did my best without rambling too much or going all over the place too much, and I do apologize if I did, and I probably did. But I just wanted to come on here and let you guys know what the difference is between a soft reboot and a hard reboot. So you can get an idea of exactly where shows like the new Saved by the Bell and the new Animaniacs fall in. Like what category, which is mostly for both of them a soft reboot. So that's all I can really say, guys. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what your thoughts down below. I hope you all stay safe. Go out and vote if you can. Don't pay attention to any of the polls. And remember, Election Day is the primary day of voting. And that's when we will know what the future of the country will be. Excuse me. So until next time, guys, take care. God bless. I'm out and stay safe. Excuse me there again. Peace.